Yeah, you can just go.
All right.
You don't need another introduction.
No, I don't need to. All right. Can you guys hear me all right? All right. They asked me if I would trip on the cord. I said, not until you ask me. So, I see why. We got to work around these two guys. Okay, there we go. So let's talk quickly about our mission. And it's to save lives and serve humanity. Village of Hope started over 25 years ago. Fred Asari, who many of you met, was working in the deaf ministry at Nashwan Road Church of Christ in Accra. And they had a need, and they had this need for orphans. And they had an original piece of property, which we still have, which is now a different campus, in what is a suburb of Accra called Ayawasu. Right now, when we talk about Hope Training Institute is housed on the old campus. But because it's landlocked, we realized very quickly, or they realized very quickly, we're not going to be able to do the work we need to do. And so they really moved to the country. Feta is about, on a good day, an hour. If you're taking traffic, it's about an hour out of the city. And the chief in that area gave them property to put the first orphan. I think we built 2 homes first. And those young people are in their 30s, headed towards 40, some of the first people that were there. So we have an orphanage in the local school. Well, the first thing that happened was when you have 20, well, I think we started out 13. You start out with that many kids, somebody's going to get sick. When somebody gets sick, you got to take them to the hospital. And almost every day with 30 to 40 kids, we were running into town taking a kid to the hospital. And so they reached out, so we've got to get a nurse, right? And so but they went to Canada to get a nurse. I don't know, one of those things that we did back in the day was like, we got to get a Canadian nurse because, and like, why didn't we get a nurse from Ghana? But we sent a Canadian nurse over there, and we built her a house so she could care for the kids. And then the villagers found out we had a nurse. And so every morning she'd go out and she'd have 2 or 3 villagers on her porch. How many of you are medical professionals, doctors, PTs? How many of you don't like to tell people that? Because everybody, and when they go, I got this thing, what would I do? Would you take this, And so the villager, they kept showing up, and so they built her a clinic because she was serving our kids, and she was serving a good part of the villages around us. Well, that is now a hospital with 2 surgery theaters, 2 doctors, almost 4 doctors. We've got doctors coming and going right now, and over 20 nurses. We now have the only other NICU in the region besides the one at the Capitol Hospital. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. But all of that started, everything we're talking about started from just trying to help orphans. And the local school wasn't very good, so we needed a better school. And so we built a school, and the kids have to pass an exam to go on to middle school to go on to high school. So at one time, only 40% of the kids that passed the exam could go on. And so, we needed to make sure these kids could go on. Those kids that weren't, that had some background, had some issues, that's why we started the Vocational Training Institute for street kids and kids from the village that were not able to go on with their education. And so I want to show you kind of some of those things. But when we talk about, and I wanted you to notice this is not something that we came up with here. This is what our brothers and sisters in Ghana came up with to become a self-sustaining group of nonprofit organizations. Now, you guys are not on, and I appreciate what you said about a mission point. It is hard, and I get that's how we see it, and I think that's the way to see it, but it hits me that this is really no longer a mission point. We don't send people over. We are in this work together, and just like you would do with any nonprofit, if you will, is we're supporting the work that they're doing. So the work of Village of the Hope Children's Place is a new orphanage that we've taken over. The Village Church of Christ in Hot Springs had a gentleman that was supporting a man in an orphanage in Bongo, which is just like 30, 40 miles off the Burkina Faso border in far north Ghana. And he would go, and things looked good, and things were happening, and then they said, he was getting older, he said, we need you to take it over. Well, when we sent a team up there to audit it, we found out that half the kids were not orphans, they were family members. And most of the things the money had been sent for had not been done. And so there's a whole saga, it should be a mini-series, to the fact that we actually had to meet with the tribal chief to tell them what was going on, because Ghanaians from the south were going to the north, and there were some tribal issues with us stepping in and saying, this is not right how these things are being done. And so this gentleman had, if I can say such, had embezzled over $100,000 of funds, and they had not gone to children or gone to the facilities, including the fact that we had to get the police involved to get the truck back. So different things like that. And so we sent a team of social workers and administrators and everything. We now have 25 kids there, and it is now called Hope Children's Place. It's part of all of our work there. Hope Children's Village, which is in Feta, the original orphanage. Hope Training Institute that I told you about in Ayawasu. Hope Christian Hospital, which again started from the care of children. Hope Christian Academy, which was, when we were there, was one or two. I don't even think the second story was there in 2004. And it's now a 3-story building that we'll show you in a minute, with over 500 kids. Hope Ridge School is another school that we were asked to take over in the Kwatia, which is in the eastern region, which is a beautiful part of the country as well. And there's one of the teachers that we trained the first time I was there is now their headmaster. And I was not gray-headed then, and I'm gray-headed now, and Richard reminds me of that pretty often. He said, I knew you when you were redheaded. I'm like, yeah, I know, brother. And then Hope College was started through the donation of a particular family in St. Louis. And so it is a 4-year boarding high school, which is typical in the system there. And it has become, we had a kid last year that had the second highest test on the exam for all of West Africa come out of Hope College. And that increases our notoriety, and then increases our enrollment, so much to the fact that we're looking at building another dormitory and doing some things, because we have enough students, and because we have that many students, every kid that's an orphanage Village of Hope gets to go to Hope College for free, because it's sustaining itself. So I got a point. There we go. So Hope Children's Village, 91 kids, residential, non-residential kids. We have different kids, and we've had more at different times, that won't be in the cottages, won't be in the homes, but they will be under the care of another Christian couple somewhere. And we don't have a ton of that. We've had up to 20, I think, at different times based on certain situations. So non-residential children. Children in high schools, 33, most of them at Hope College. Children in college and other tertiary institutes, we've got 50. I'm going to have to turn around myself. 58. Children in trade school, vocational institutes. And these are the kids from the orphanage that we have sent to Ayawasu or other trade schools. And then children awaiting entry into tertiary institutions, because they take an exam at a certain part of the year. If they're not able to get in, they have to wait. Most of them stay at the village. When they're 18, the state now, or the government now requires that we send them back to their home village. You know, which has answered some of our questions and prayers, because as you raise, 50, 60, 100 kids, you've got them to high school, you've got them to college. Some of you know how many groceries you have to buy when your college kid comes home. Think about how many groceries you'd have to buy if you had 60 to 80 college kids coming home all the time. And so they are prepared. They go back to family. They're welcome. They all come at Christmas. They all come at different times. But in that time, they usually go back to their home village when there's care. These are some of the current children that are there. And our current babies, we have babies coming, we have babies going. When you guys go, I'm trying to get there either with you guys or before you guys get there, because there are babies coming into babies' home, and they need an old white dude to rock them very badly. That is my prescription, and that's what I'm going to do. I've got to do some visiting to other entities, but I'm going to rock babies every chance I get. And we're very happy. We're very excited about what's going to happen in the babies' home. There is a growing middle class in Ghana, and so every one of these children that are sometimes abandoned, sometimes the mother has passed, many times they are giving up. They're given up because of the mom situation. Many times when there's a teen pregnancy, there's a ton of shame around that, and so the babies, even though they're healthy, are abandoned. And then we do have babies that are born with congenital issues that are abandoned in the bush. And so one home, it's called the McClanahan home. You may know those folks. They're really good people. That will be for babies that many of them will grow up there for a while until they are adopted out. And we do not presently, and it will be mine, we don't adopt kids to the U.S. If you've met kids in the U.S., they're pretty rotten. I really like the kids in Ghana. I'm like, why would we bring them here and mess them up when you can do so? I tried to send my kids. And they're like, $100 a month, you can help an orphan. I'm like, I'll send you $100 a month per kid if you'll take mine. But, we're raising up kids in the kingdom. We're raising up leaders there. And so we're very blessed in the fact that there is a place for these kids to be adopted into. The other home, which Heartbeat for Hope here in Edmond is raising money for, the other home will be a home for babies with disabilities. And one of the things we're looking at long-term is we're going to have to be working more on endowments than we have in the past, because we'll care for these babies their entire life, however long that may be. And so we're looking at, what that looks like on equipment, what that looks like on caregivers, and also what that looks like on the finances, because these kids will be with us over the long term. And we hope they have a long life, but we're going to have to take care of them there. And so the babies are now moving out of what is the baby ward in the hospital into the McClanahan baby home. And if you don't understand why I want to go right now and go rock babies, you're not paying attention to the pictures behind me. Okay? And so these beautiful kids, I have trouble talking about this without crying sometimes. These kids come with no name because they've been abandoned. They don't know who their mother is. They don't know who their father is. All the time. Sometimes they may know, but they come without a name. And so there is a naming ceremony that they do. Francis Flair is a student, was a young man that grew up there that actually came to Oklahoma Christian and lives here in Edmond with his wife and new baby. And while Fred was here, we went and did a naming ceremony. And they gave him his family, his father's name, his mother's name, a name that they bestowed upon him. And we prayed over each one of those names. And when these babies come, they're given the name of different leaders around the churches and elders that have supported them, and different people that we know are men of faith, families of faith. And it's just amazing because these kids now have a name. And I got about 3 or 4 sermons on that, but you didn't come to hear that part. I keep pointing over there. So again, beautiful kids, smiling kids. This is kids in institutional care. These are kids coming from some pretty desperate situations. And so there definitely can be some issues. But these guys do such a great job managing kids. Also, they're kind of old school in the fact that when you have a big brother and big sister, you don't misbehave as much, because I have lots of memories of some pretty feisty little kids getting run out of the house with a big sister coming after. Mom didn't have to do a thing because big sister was going to fix it. Yes?
For those in here that don't know these pictures, the one on the lower right is Patricia. She's one of the kids that Oakdale is supporting.
Okay, very cool, very cool. See, I didn't know that, so. Oh, there we go. Oh, let's go back one. So this is what we're working on. These are the kids that are going out. We had a young lady that we had really kind of fallen in love with there, and when we were there in 18, unbeknownst to us, we were out and came back to the end of her wedding. And we were able to be there on her wedding day. And we still keep up with her, and to see what these young people are doing. These are some of the students at the trade school. We'll get to that in just a second. This is the campus of Hope Children's Village. Some of you that have been in the past, you can't imagine the growth that we've seen. Where we started out with, in 2004, we started out with, I think, 4 homes and a couple of outbuildings. And now it's a big campus with schools and everything else. When we first went, you couldn't get a signal. You would have to go out to the road. You would actually have to go to Castlewood to even get a cell signal. And then the next year, you could go out to the road from the village and get somewhat of a signal. And then the next year, when my son went, he said, Fred told me to tell you I'm calling you from the middle of the campus. And now Fred and I talk not only on a regular basis, but we Zoom and we do video calls all the time, and it just blows my mind what we're able to do. We've actually, during COVID, we actually Zoomed in to dedicate buildings with the families that had donated money to that. And that was a really cool deal. So as we look at the growth of that, these are our house parents. They do an amazing job. Many of these men or women may work outside the house as well. Most of them do have jobs within the village. And many of our house parents also go into neighboring churches and preach, sometimes on a full-time basis every Sunday, or they go around almost like on a circuit. And so these are not only folks that are raising kids and doing other things, maybe teaching, doing different things around the village. Like some of them will be over maintenance, some of them will be over facilities or different things. Some of them may work in the office and do accounting, but they're always, serving in lots of different ways. Oop, go back to that, house parents. And I think it's the young lady on the right takes care of, y'all's right too. Christy was a child that was found in the bush, abandoned, and had most likely what was cerebral palsy and several other congenital issues. She was abandoned in the bush because her family didn't want to take care of her, didn't know to take care of her, thought she might be possessed, depending on what they see in that kid. And Christy was raised by a family there for a long time until the house parent, the mother, passed away. And she now has a permanent home there with a permanent caregiver, and the lady on the right is that caregiver. And so we have those opportunities, and we'll have caregivers in the baby's home, and we'll have more full-time caregivers on the other. So 28 new children, and I think we actually, that's now, since then, we've got 36 children from the orphanage gave their lives to Christ through baptism in 2022. There are some kids that go through there. We've had a handful that make the decision not to do that. And I bring that up in the fact that you would understand, just like many of us, we wanted our kids to be baptized and those things, but these are kids making that choice. But when they're in that environment all the time, some of the kids that we've had still had ties to their family, and they may have, it was usually not a matter of Christianity or not Christianity, but what brand. So their family might have been Pentecostal, or their family might have been Catholic, and so they weren't going to participate even though they were cared for there. But most of these kids come to Christ through their time there at the Village of Hope. And we talked about baptisms earlier. We have a baptistry there on campus. So they have sip and paint, but they're not sipping what you may think they're sipping, just so you know. All right, they have painting classes. We do different things. When you have those kind of kids, you got that many kids, we keep them busy. Every night there's a devotional. We used to have services like when we would come, we would have services every night. Many of you remember gospel meetings, 5 nights, 7:30 to 9:30, all the things. And when we would go, it would be a service. And one of my funniest memories was, I think they preached it a little longer because we were there. They wanted to make sure that we saw that they were doing good work. And the kids were starting to just pass out, fall over. And the rule is, if you're a little kid sitting in a chair, when a big kid comes over, he kind of pops you or whatever. You're supposed to get up for the bigger kids. There was a pecking order. And then so everybody was in their chairs, and some little kids were sitting with big kids, and they were just falling out. And Roland Bully, who was a principal there, me being a middle principal, we were very tight. We were also about the same round shape. And but Roland had a real high voice, and he would tell them, he said, "Encourage your brother and sister. Encourage them. They are falling asleep. Encourage them." And I thought it was great, but what they did was every kid from the back row up, every kid behind a kid slapped the other kid in the head. Like at one time when he said, "Encourage your brothers," bap, 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 all the way up to the front. And I'm like, we might want to do that at home some. But it was so funny and my kids, they would say, "Encourage." I said, "Do not encourage your brother like you've been told to encourage your brother." We do have a soccer pitch there, and they do play with the school. And when they're not playing with the school, it is an amazing thing to see people play high-speed football in flip-flops. And my son played high school soccer, was not a great player, but he brought his cleats and got smoked by kids with the flip-flops. Is it coming? Bing. So we had the 4 original houses. We raised money over the last year to renovate those. If you want to just keep going through that. And so this is what the house looks like. So you see go back to the living room real quick. You see the living room, there's a television. We always make sure, because they'll finish school, they'll do chores, some of the kids will help cook, they'll eat dinner or have devotional and then eat dinner, and they sit around and do their homework at the table. And then after dinner and homework and everything has been done, they usually will sit down as a family and kind of watch something on TV. So I'm from Texas. I do a lot of my work in Spanish, and so I do watch some Spanish TV. It's just kind of what goes on. You go to a Mexican restaurant, and there's a novela playing. And so what is amazing, And I spent some time in Brazil as well, and they have, Portuguese novelas. And to walk into a home in West Africa and to see them watching a Spanish novela being translated to English will make your brain explode. Because I'm like, I walked in and I knew the show they were watching that had been poorly dubbed into English and had to remind myself I was in West Africa. I'm like, this is an alternate plane, man. I don't even know what's going on. But they'll sit around and watch novelas, of all things, every night. So I just wanted to show you that. Next slide. These homes are all concrete. The homes have been maintained as well as you can. A couple of things. Number one, that many kids in that climate, there's dirt, you see the new paint. Also, you see the windows. Anything that is wood does not last long. Termites will eat it all up. Before we built the new boys' dormitory, it was built out of sheets of plywood. And we were replacing walls every year. We'd have to take sheets of plywood off that were barely there and put new sheets of plywood. And so that's another reason. Not only is it the best structure for that part of the world, but also the windows that have wood casings, you have to replace those about every 4 to 5 years. And so you see the living room, you see the bunk. So we'll have a room with anywhere from 4 to 6. We have a couple of houses that may have 8 bunk beds in it. But usually they have taken a bigger room and made that. We try to keep it to anywhere from typically 4 to 6 bunks in there. They all have a trunk with their things in it, and then they have another place where they can keep some other things. So Preston Crest out of Dallas has a home. They recently gave for that. You can keep popping. So you see the living room, you see the furniture. We added new furniture. Of course, if you know how having 16 kids in a house will wear on your furniture. The floor is a terrazzo. I keep telling them we need to get kids roller skates. This is the thing I showed you, the homecoming party where kids came back. Stop here for a second. I don't know if we'll have Mark on here. When we went in 2006, there had been a picture in the New York Times of a story of the slave children in the fishing industry in Ghana. And New York Times ran a story about Mark Kudrow and his siblings and other kids that had been sold by their parents into the fishing industry. Mark was 5. Mark was in a pair of underwear and a T-shirt bailing water out of a hollowed-out wooden boat and sleeping on a dirt floor and maybe eating 1 or 2 meals every 3 or 4 days. We were there on the Sunday, their first Sunday there, and we were able to watch them at Christmas. And we had this huge feast at Christmas. And then we watched Mark, who, of course, was still very timid, very quiet. He's a quiet young man today. But we watched him after everybody had eaten. He grabbed a bag and was just kind of sneaking around, taking food and putting it into a bag to save it because he could not imagine there would be food the next day. We had to sit him down and had the parents tell him, we're going to feed you breakfast in the morning, you're going to get lunch tomorrow, you're going to get dinner. Because he just couldn't believe, there's no way I can pass this food up because it's not going to be around tomorrow. And we said, you don't have to pour food out of somebody else's bowl. You've had all you can eat today, we'll feed you tomorrow. And so anytime I see these kids just sitting around eating, a lot of these are party pictures, of course, but it just always reminds me of that time. And we'll go on to the next picture. So it's a great day, great stuff. We'll keep going. So Hope Children's Place is a children's home at Bongo. Like I told you, we've got 20 kids. We now have 25 kids there. We have a couple that are out. One young lady wanted to go to college, passed her exam to go to college, and they said, we don't have the money. And the money was being sent every month. And they would not give her money to go to college. And so for 4 years, she didn't get to go to college. And so once we have taken over, she now got to go to college, but they just kept telling her they didn't have the money while the guy there was building his own house somewhere else. And so she's in college, she's doing well, but she's one of those kids in college as well. And that's what we ended up taking over. And so you see these kids, these kids will typically be from the different tribes because of the tribes that come from north to south. Those kids actually came, we brought all those kids to Feta for Christmas, and they were there for 2 weeks to be with the other kids and have all the festivities and get everything there as well, to have a party and mass, and then they went back to Bongo. And so we built those relationships, and also they were able to get the benefit of being down there in Feta. So we can kind of click through these. You see these kids, uniforms, we have uniforms for the kids. We actually had to put in sidewalks because of the rainy season. You couldn't get from building to building. There was none of that. The buildings were leaking, all kind of different things. We had to repaint them, kill the mold, many different things. We had to buy cups and bowls because the money we had sent had been used for something else. They brought in cups and bowls when the people would visit, and then they would take them back away from the kids. The kids didn't have cups, which are a quarter. So we refurnished the houses. This is what it looks like now at Bongo. And it's definitely, I got tickled when I saw this. I'm like, we painted the inside walls blue. We really believe in Village of Hope blue, but to me, that's a much, right? But it looks great. Kids love it. Children from Hope's Place ready for career day at school. So that they're there to be farmers. So the next one, Hope Training Institute. What happens is kids that their parents can't afford to continue to feed them will send them away. And so they come to the city. They come to Accra, and they try to make their way. And, of course, they're abused. Many times the young ladies are sexually abused. They're used for labor and then not paid for it. And they are seriously living on the street. We have a feeding program that feeds these kids every day. And they come, and just like we do here a lot of times, if you'll stay for the Bible study, you'll get to stay for lunch. And these kids that consistently come back and show interest and show some consistency, we invite them to come and stay with us at the Training Institute. And so we have kids doing leather work, which is actual leather work, hairdressing. We have a lot of girls doing the hairdressing, sewing, where the bags that we have here, they learn to make those because they make most of their clothes in the villages. You see all the stuff. They make all of those out of wax print cloth, beautiful cloth, and the kids learn to do that. And then auto mechanics. We have a brother in Midland, Texas that has his own auto mechanics business, a big shop, and he has been a huge supporter and donor there. So the kids do that. Let's go to the next slide. We'll see some of those things. So these are the trainees in all those different programs. This is the staff and you've got to understand these kids are coming off the street, so it is also institutional care for young people trying to figure out all those things and the trauma that they've been through. So we have some trauma-informed approaches that we're using there as well. And so the Titus Glover Workshop Building, this was one of the first buildings that we ever had orphans in this whole work, and now it's our workshop building. And then we recently had renovations, and so this is the hairdressing workshop, the leather works workshop, and they have big surge machines, so they can actually, it is leather work actually on top of the sewing. And then training sessions that they do, whether it's in hair, all kind of different ways, sewing the bags. And these kids really have been pretty innovative in some of the things they've made. And you see that they're also just doing artwork. Many of these kids that end up at the Training Institute have great artistic ability. And we're starting to find that some of these kids are actually making a living as an artist, drawing portraits, drawing those things. And so we're finding out that we're trying to tap into those kids that have that interest, that they may not have a certain educational aptitude because they weren't in school, but they have a lot of artistic ability as well. And this is the 8 trainers that graduated this past year. When they graduate, we give them the materials they need to go and do the job. You see that boxed into the red is a hair dryer, like you would have in a salon. And she had that whole drawer is things that you can use in her hairdressing business as a beautician, if you will. I'm from Texas and I'm old, and so she's a beautician, but she's a hairdresser, and we give them all the equipment they need to set up plus the equivalent of $500 cash capital to go. They've taken all these trainings and they've also learned to be entrepreneurs, how to run a business, how to market your business, how to promote your business on top of the tools. So kids, this young man is auto mechanics. He's got all the tools. He's got jacks, he's got wrenches, he's got sockets, he's got everything he needs to start working on cars over there. And I've always asked, for those of you that know, does he have at least more than one 10-millimeter socket or half-inch wrench? This is the artwork that we were talking about, where these kids, because we finally gave them an opportunity, have brought that out. And you see these amazing drawings. So the next one. These are the bags that you see there. Beautiful fabrics, good work. They learn how to do that. And from that, they're learning that. So every dollar that we raise there, we bring those over. When you guys go in October, we're going to have you bring some trunks back with you. Y'all get first dibs here on whatever you want to buy, and then we're going to get them and sell them somewhere else. But you see these bags, and we can keep going on that. Hope Christian Hospital, we talked about the medical facility there at FETA. And total of outpatients attendance is 16,000. with a daily attendance of 65 patients. Pre-COVID, when Fred and I were talking, we were having a baby there every other day. We were having about 15 babies a month, and now we're having I don't know where the half goes, but we're having 1.5 to 2 babies per day there at the hospital. So by the way of Safe Care Initiative, the hospital moved from a level 3 to a level 4. It is becoming a prominent hospital out in the country based on the other hospitals in the country. Hope Christian Hospital, 65 patients a day, 76 inpatient beds, a lab, a pharmacy. The government is behind on paying our insurance. Imagine that. So they have national insurance, and we will run anywhere from $80,000 to $120,000 behind in billing from the government. Well, because of that, we couldn't buy the drugs that we needed for the pharmacy that the state was covering. And so we raised some money just as seed capital and bought equivalent or generic of the same kind that the insurance wouldn't cover. But if you could get it in FETA and not have to go into the city and seek it out, people were willing to pay, whatever it cost. It was at cost. And we were able to pay ourselves back within a month and a half of raising that money, buying those drugs, and letting them buy those drugs. And so it was also, we have the government pharmacy, which we can't keep drugs in because they won't pay us the money back in time. And then we have our own pharmacy set up with an equivalent that is self-sustaining. It pays for all the drugs to come in. It pays for all those folks to get that. Dental services, optometry services. We actually had a bunch of equipment donated from an optometrist in Dallas, and I took a bunch of guys over there. We loaded it up, carried it to a container. There's a container that leaves Houston almost every month that goes to Ghana, and we only have to pay for the cubic feet. So if we take one barrel, we take a bunch of equipment. We take a crate, a pallet. We're about to send another X-ray machine over there for the NICU unit. So we have the NICU as well. So Hope Christian Hospital, like I said, started out on a porch, and we just kept building, and we kept building. We can just keep going through those. And Renee, you may have something else you want to add to this because you're very involved in this as well. We were running out of space for the hospital, and so the Don Barnett houses, as we call them, the Barnett houses, because we had so many kids and then our numbers went down because kids were going to college, we asked the Barnett family if we could turn those into wards. And so we have a female ward, a male ward, and another house that has been the children's ward. And that's where those 76 beds come in, and that's what you're seeing there. So daily operations at the hospital, we have intake, we have pharmacy, we have labs. All of that is in-house right there. The NICU, Dr. Willis he's actually out of Mississippi with his contacts out of Memphis, has taken, and we now have, we've just bought some equipment for oxygen monitoring and different things for these babies that we needed to be able to take care of these kids in the NICU. And like I said, they're sending us babies from all over the country because we're the only other NICU in the whole region outside of Accra. So Prematurity Week, we are not for it, we are bringing awareness to it. And there is, of course, a big issue with that because of the health issues that many moms face prenatally. And so that is, number one, pushing the health issues and making sure people understand what's going on, and then also letting know that what services we have available. And so that's what this was. Hope Christian Academy is the school there in FETA that started out for the orphans. So 135 preschool kids, 409 kids 1 through 9, so just under about 545 kids. So preschool they call crèche, so pre-K 3, pre-K 4. And if you really want an adventure, just go hang out in the 4-year-old class or the 3-year-old class. And then kids wear the uniform. We have computers. We have some internet access that we haven't had in the past, but these kids have access to Word, different Microsoft things so they can learn that. This is a picture of these young women. It was career day. And so they dressed up like the careers they want to have. The Army, you see the younger kids there. These young ladies wanted to be nurses. And you see the young lady, if you go back real quick, you see the Muslim young lady there. She's one that came to that school. It's Hope Christian Academy. Everybody knows what we're doing, but it's such a good school. These families are sending their kids, and then these kids are soaking up all the things that go on there at chapel every day and devotionals every day and biblical teaching. And like I said, some of these kids are converting as well. Yes.
Can you tell them the story that Fred had a dad bring a daughter
Yeah. So, and I don't think it's this young lady, but the dad wanted his kid at this school. It was a great school, and he wanted his daughter to get all the benefits of that. And he said, but she needs this and she needs that. And Fred said, this is and if you've met Fred, you know Fred doesn't mince any words. He said, this is a Christian academy. We would love to have your daughter, but we do things as Christians here. And if she's to go to school here, she'd be expected to be in chapel. She'd be expected to be in Bible class. She'll be expected to do those things. And so the dad let her go, and she was one of those that was converted. And the dad came and basically blessed the baptism. But, you know, when you hear these stories, you hear about Muslim kids converting and the parents, you know, being very adamant about it. And they had seen such a change in their daughter. So when the kids come to Hope College, let's go ahead and finish this, and I'll go on to Hope College. So the schools have a team, a 7th grade team, an 8th grade team in football. Like I said, they do great. This is the 3-story building, the Tilton building. And that's, like I said, when we were there in 2004, it was 1 story, and they knew they were going to build on, and we built on twice. We also just bought new desks. We had a push for new equipment because originally we had wooden chairs and wooden desks. And you go in after the summer, and half your desk is eaten up because the termites have gotten it while you're not moving it around and sitting at it. And so we now have what looks more like tradition, the metal frames, you know, a laminated cover, much like that, and they're going to last us a lot longer. Male boarding students. This was a little tough for me because we have boarding students as young as 8. And they send their kids away to come to school. And they're well cared for and they're well managed. But it's just so different because it's part of the British system that all their parents were raised with. The parents don't bat an eye. Now, I thought when I found out about their high schools, they were geniuses because when a kid turns 14, you send them for somebody else to take care of them. Like, that's a smart move. Right, if I could have sent my high school kids away for a season and like, you can take care of them for a while, I thought that'd be great. But it was a little disconcerting to me to see that until we got to, you know, we watched the operations. They're well managed, they're well taken care of. There is not a big history of bullying or any kind of abuse that the kids face, which was my concern just because I know the things we've dealt with that. But we have a boys' dormitory, we have the girls' dormitory, and so they do that, and they have their own bathhouses and things. The other thing that happens, too, in the orphanage as well as in the schools, we have really nice facilities, but the kids bathe in a bucket. The kids, even in the orphan homes, learn to cook over fire, even though we have an oven in the kitchen. Because, see, these kids aren't going to be there forever. And when they go back to their home village, they're going to cook over a fire. They're going to bathe in a bucket. And so even though we have some nice facilities that they can use, most of the time we're teaching them how to live as they would live outside the Village of Hope. So Hope Ridge School is in Nequatia in the eastern region, and we've got like 300 kids there. So we've got 46 kids, and you see what's going on with preschool. We've got 101, we've got 157 in 1 through 6, and then we have 48 because we've been growing that school. So what we are going to see in the future is we're going to continue to have 160, 180 kids in the lower grades, and we're going to be growing. Those kids are going to move up. We don't have a lot of competition in the junior high area. Like, there's not a junior high school that they may go to. They'll most likely be at the Ridge School, and so we know we're going to have that growing. We've got some. Heartbeat for Hope helped build our nursery building, which freed up some classrooms. It's going to give us some space to do that. So this is the Hope Ridge campus. There's 2 long buildings. There's one kind of make an L shape with the courtyard and the field. We have a kitchen behind that, and then behind that building you see is the nursery building that they built for the younger grades. So the next picture, these are the desks we're talking about. You see the metal frame, you see the laminate tops, and they work out better. Cultural group of Hope Ridge schools. You know, we have cultural days at our school because in America we have so many different cultures coming here. You have to realize in Ghana, you don't see it because you don't know. But all these kids come from different tribes. All the kids that come into the village as orphans come from all over the country, and they're all from different tribes. And you wouldn't know that because there is no tribalism at the Village of Hope. But as soon as you walk out of that campus, you will meet people, and they'll work together, and then somebody will pull you aside and say, do not trust that man. And I didn't know what to do with that at first. I didn't know what was going on. And there's just this tribalism right under the surface. Right? And we could say how bad that is, but I don't know if you know how we do things here. You know, I mean, I told people I was going to Oklahoma, and they said, are you sure? And I said, they're fine. They're really good people. It's all going to work out. So there's all kind of tribes. And I wanted to ask, I'm going to ask you, Rich, right here in front of everybody. All these kids are going to OSU. All your seniors are going to OSU. Did you have anything to do with that? Or okay, I just thought there was some campaigning or something going on. Like, man, every one of these kids is going to be a cowboy. Sorry, I didn't mean to start a fight. There's tribalism coming up right there already. That was an example I wanted to use. The Parks building, which is, again, another classroom building. And these are people that either donate, not necessarily the building, but the renovations for that. So these are the two buildings that you see with all the classrooms, much like you've seen. Hope College. Hope College is different in the fact that when we built it, we wanted to stand out. 140 kids in grade 10, 177 in grade 11, and you see that we've got 81 that are seniors. And you have to understand, we now know that we're going to have the 177 are going to be seniors, 144, and then we're going to be bringing in probably 150 to 160 10th graders. So that's why we've been working on dormitory space for that, so that we can do that. This is a brick building, which is very rare, really, in the country. But it was one of the things that our donor wanted to do, and one of the things, of course, that Fred wanted to do, because we knew it would stand out when people came. So those of you that send your kid to college and you're like, why am I spending all my money on these new buildings and the rec center and all that? It's because we know your kid wants to go there, and so they do that. And we've done the same with Hope College. We have a great school, but we also have good facilities. We just built the Karen Chisholm Wellness Center because kids, you've got 400 and something kids there, they're going to get sick, and they can't be in the dormitory, or they can't be in class that day. And so they can't be, if they're sick, they can't be in the dormitory anyways, but they can't be in there unsupervised. So we have the infirmary for sick kids there at the college, and you can imagine with that many kids, we'll have some from time to time. So these kids are doing great work. Many of them come from all over the country. We've actually had kids that were Ghanaian that came from Germany, came from Spain, because their families wanted them to go to school in Ghana, but also go into a good school in Ghana. So we'll continue that. There's our faculty members. Most of these are college graduates, if not master levels teachers, that we're able to have there. And again, it's a high school that it's called the college. We have a police cadet corps that are training to be police. We have a regimental band. They don't play in chapel that I know of, just for those of you that are worried about it. Speaking of tribalism, I'm not getting into that. Village of Hope. Let's see the next slide. Kids are trained, staff are trained, house parents are trained. And we will have ministers from around the surrounding area come, and it is a hub for those ministers to support. We try not to do it a lot, but we also we funnel funds through us that will go to the Village of Hope for the dissemination to, because a church may sponsor a preacher but not have the kind of the wherewithal to be able to get them funds. And so we support some of them just as a flow through. People donate to us from a church, and we make sure it gets to the preachers that it's meant to get. So church growth, and like I said, our house parents, our staff are expected to be evangelistic as anybody else. So,
About 5 minutes.
Yeah. You bet. Yeah, no, definitely. So speaking of tribals, kindergartners is the one that I was thinking of. So what's our next one? I'm trying to remember what our next slide is. So these are projects that we have going on. We just bought the 5 acres of land that was next to us. And the main reason we bought that was so that it was not encroached upon. So it's kind of enclosed us to the road. So we have that space that we're able to add, but more so we're able to protect it from, people setting up shop, doing whatever, maybe setting up a homestead. And so we bought that 5 acres, and this is the wall that's around it. That road runs down the side of the building and goes around to Hope College. There is a National Soccer Institute just to the other side of us that is well known, and so people kind of know that road as well. So we can just keep going through there. 2 new babies' homes, the McClanahan family babies' homes, and the Lashley Williams babies' home. Some of you may know the Lashleys. And again, the Lashley Williams home will be for babies with disabilities of all sorts, and will probably be on long-term care. So we talked about this when we were here before, laptop for 58 children in college, support for abandoned babies. You guys have given to both of those, a vehicle to transport abandoned babies. This is the truck that you guys had a big role. One of your members here has given a good sum to that, and this is the new baby mobile. I wanted to call it the Baby Mobile. I wanted it wrapped in vinyl with all pictures of beautiful kids, and they said that we're not going to do that. I'm like, I think that'd be cool. And they're like, it's not your job. The thing about this truck, I will tell you, Fred has the keys. It is parked at his home, not for his use, but for when they get a call, that truck is to only be used to go out to pick up babies and bring back to the baby's home. Because just like you know, in your home or in your business, if everybody sees the new truck, everybody's like, hey, I just need to, I know you got to, can I just take the, and we're like, no, this truck is dedicated to going and getting and picking up and bringing babies back from all over the country that will be brought back really at a moment's notice. You know, this is like the ambulance to go pick up those babies, because when we get the call, social services is not going to house that baby or care for that baby, possibly even try to feed it. So when we find out about it, we get there as soon as we can. And this is the truck that you guys donated. I think we've got a couple of pictures of it. Next slide. So also laptops. Many of you donated just individually for laptops. And we started with our seniors because they have their senior projects. And I think all of our seniors are taken care of. Our juniors, we have a few sophomore and freshmen, as it were. This is our present need. You guys, I'm just showing you this because there's been some requests, but also I want you guys to know you guys gave for those laptops. You guys had a big role to play in us getting that truck. The interesting part about the truck was we had, on Fred's visit, we had several people, including some of your members here, dedicate, you know, they said, we want to give this. And we're like, okay, great. So let's get all the numbers together. And we went and talked to the Toyota folks, and they said, as you go, when you go to buy a car, we have an incentive this month. And we have a 10% discount, which is $4,000. And so we called everybody that had committed and said, can you give us that money this month? And they're like, absolutely, because that'll save us $4,000. Just special for you today. But we saved $4,000 on getting that truck, and that's why it's now in our possession now, because of you guys and other folks. So our present deal with the baby's home is they'll need wardrobes for caregiver rooms, a washing machine and a dryer. And I looked at that and I'm like, really? And then I went to Home Depot and went, oh, yeah. No, they're that expensive everywhere. And they're more expensive here because, of course, everything's imported. You know, it's going to come over on a boat from somewhere, most likely be a Samsung or LG washer or a name that sounds something like that. So the baby's home is, if we'll go back to that real quick, the baby's home we're looking at just to furnish everything, $3,400. And then we've got 11 more kids that we're getting laptops for. And I want you guys to know a couple of things about this. Number one, I'm so excited that you guys are going to go over. And if you haven't signed up for the team, see Renee, or who else, Renee, would they see? Or is this? So see Renee, or Rich. See Renee or Rich, and we would love to have you guys come over. And just like I told you, we did not go on that first team. And I'm okay with that. That was God's work. And then we took the second team over. And then I've been involved in this mess for now 20 years. It's a huge blessing. It's a blessing to see it. It's a blessing to be a part of it. I will tell you, my job as the board president is so easy because we bring Fred over about every 18 months. Let him tell the story. If you haven't signed up for a newsletter, we'll give you an opportunity to do that. And what has made the difference with us, when we were with another nonprofit, they were telling all these different stories. And when we got to tell our own story at the Village of Hope and send out our own newsletter every month, the only expenses we have stateside is the printing and distribution of the newsletter. And we have a lady at Preston Crest Church of Christ that works for us part-time that takes all the checks from our Dallas mailbox, records them, deposits them, sends you your tax notice, and gives us a running count of the donors, who they were, what they gave, and what it was designated for. And that's the only cost we have. All of us board members, of course, volunteer. We tend to take ourselves over there. Almost all of us but one have gone. And we're going to drag him over there pretty quick. But just want you to know, it is so easy for me because every dollar we send goes directly to kids. Like I said, we were looking for sponsorship for kids. I think we've got most of those covered presently. But right now we're still at $100 a kid. That's their food, that's their clothing, that's their house parents, that's their equipment, that's their school fees if they need them. That's everything these kids need. And people have asked me, it's like, well, where does that $100 go? I go, you evidently have never raised a child. Because and we really can raise a kid on $100 a month with everything, including a great education, great health care, and all those things. And so I want you to know how much we appreciate what you have already done, and we're really excited about this relationship. And what will happen is you won't need me to come back very often, because once you guys go, you're going to be your own ambassadors for this work. And it is a huge blessing. And I will tell you, I'm just excited to have you guys in the family, because I'm able to talk to all the folks that have gone and all the things that we shared and all the great work that goes on and the great opportunities that will come from here. So thank you guys so much. Thank you for what you guys do.